Hi, I'm Robert Perella, and we're outside the Marin Center in Marin, California, where we're showcasing and presenting David Icke. And this is produced by New Living Expo and Ken Kaufman and myself, Robert Perella, at United Light Entertainment. And we're looking forward to an in-depth look into what makes David Icke tick, what his work is about with his new book, Human Race, Get Off Your Knees, The Lion Sleeps No More. It is said that leadership is founded upon people making intelligent decisions that benefit the masses with often startling and incredible results. David is a way shower. He's part of the transition team. He's one who makes the difference. I think you're going to find this a very interesting YouTube presentation for your entertainment pleasure and for your wisdom. Thanks so much and enjoy the interview. David, when I read your book, Human Race, Get Off Your Knees, The Lion Sleeps No More, one of the things that stood out for me was the fact that the moon is a hollow construct that has been interacting with human DNA since perhaps before recorded history. I'm looking at that and saying to myself, when we have a revealment or an understanding like that, something like that only comes around every 300 years. It's a remarkable finding. Why do you feel that?
Well, to answer that question, you really have to look at my life in the last 20 years. 20 years ago, I had a massive awakening. I went to a side gig when I was still a television presenter, still a national spokesman of the British Green Party, into none of this stuff at all. And was told I was going to go out on the world stage and reveal great secrets. And what was said to me at that time was that they, whoever they are, would lead me to knowledge and put knowledge into my mind. And that's exactly what's happened for 20 years. From that moment, I went on a journey where some unseen force has been handing me pieces in a puzzle. And after 20 years, you get to know the sequence. And you get to know when something's going, look at this, look at this, look at this. What has happened again and again and again, Robert, is a subject has come into my life out of nowhere. And from that moment, things relating to that subject are coming at me from all angles. That's how I put the books together all along. And you get led to books, documents, personal experiences, continually repetitive confirmation of the same facts coming from different people in different ways. And I just put it together. When I started out on the whole moon thing, it was a classic sequence again, where I sat down at the computer to start writing a day of that book, and the energy in the room changed. And I thought, here we go, I know this one. And then what passed through my mind was very powerfully, the moon's not like you think it is, or worse to that effect. The moon's not what people think it's to be, like a natural body. And I put a few words into NetFind, and up came a book called Who Built the Moon, which I'd never heard of, by two researchers who've written other books. And I read it very quickly when it arrived, and I realized, as you do so often when you're challenging convention, that we're born into the world, and we tend to accept what's already here as how things are. We don't question them. And this is very relevant, for instance, now, because we are at the moment the last generations who have the ability to see how the world was in terms of at least a semblance of freedom, and how it's becoming now with all the surveillance, all the tracking, all the fingerprinting and iris scanning. The children being born today, to them, this is how it is. They've got nothing to compare it with.
The socio-conditioning is so impactful that we think this is it.
Yeah, and so apply that to the moon. You're born into the world, the moon comes up. Night after night after night, year after year after year.
You don't question it.
Don't question it. And when I started, because of this process that began, in the way I've explained, when I started looking at the moon, I was thinking, I never knew that. I never knew that. And so often when you see what is accepted to be scientific fact, like, oh, this is how the moon was formed, mate. When you go through the process of following that back, it's a theory. In truth, science has no idea where the moon came from. And as one scientist said quite rightly, the only thing you can say for sure about the moon is it must be observational error. It shouldn't be there. It's far too big. And as this book, Who Built the Moon, points out, the geometry and the mathematics between the moon, the earth, and the sun are absolutely incredible. So much so that the moon is about the same size as the sun when viewed from the earth, which is where we get the eclipses from. And then you start to realize the extent to which, never mind this moon matrix that I'm talking about as an add-on to this, even the moon being there, the size that it is, where it is, it's a fundamental impact on human life. The angle of the earth, the speed of spin, so it's affecting our relationship to time. It has a fundamental impact on the endocrine system, which connects into the chakra system, which connects into the hormonal system. It has an impact, a serious impact on the pineal gland, part of the third eye, the sixth sight, the getting out there beyond five sense reality. And of course it has a fundamental effect on the tidal systems of the earth, and we're 60-70% water. It must have some effect even on that level. And when I started going down this road and seeing all these anomalies, and then you start to see that when the moon has been impacted with a major hit, and they've got seismometers up there to sort of recording all this and seeing what happens. And, you know, they say that the moon rings like a bell or rings like a gong. One scientist talked to the authors of this book saying that it kind of shook and in a way that was like it was hollow and had hydraulic struts inside it, you know. And then you've got this very, very large titanium content of the moon, which is very different to the Earth. And what the official story of science is that the moon came out of the Earth, that a Mars-type planet hit the moon, and hit the Earth rather, and a great chunk came off and became the moon. And they call that the first one anyway, the Big Whack theory, or this impact. But when the physics of that didn't work out, they came up with a double Big Whack theory, which is that this Mars-type planet hit the Earth, went away, came back, and gave it another smack. You know, it's like they haven't got a clue, and it's very clear when you put all this stuff together that for me the moon is not real. It could be a hollowed-out planetoid, or it could be a from scratch construct, because this is the big thing that we as humans have to get across and get over if we're going to understand the nature of what's going on in the world. And that is the cutting edge of human technological, whatever you want to call it, potential. Funnily enough, sits back in amazement, deep breath, shock to the core, is actually not the cutting edge of what's actually possible. And if you want to suppress someone's sense of possibility, then suppress the information that gives them the understanding that far more is possible than appears to be so. Example, if you keep from people the law of gravity, the idea the Earth is not flat is ludicrous, because people at the bottom of a sphere without gravity would fall off. And you go, it's impossible, it's got to be flat, mate. And then you say, well, hold on, here's the law of gravity. Ah, I can see now. So what seems to be impossible, that's ridiculous, bizarre, to, I can see it now, is simply the scale of information that we have I called Credo Mutra, the Zulu shaman, and I didn't say to him, look, this is what I'm thinking here as I was putting this together. I just said to him, can you tell me any African legends about the moon. First of all, there are African tribes, as there are in other parts of the world, that say our tribe goes back to before the moon came. But also, he said to me, well, the Zulu legend of the moon is it's an egg. And of course, anthropologists immediately hear that, or whatever. They go, that's crazy, you're primitive.
Yeah.
But why do they say it's an egg?
It's living.
Because they say it was hollowed out.
Right.
And it was hollowed out far, far away in the distant cosmos by reptilian entities. And in the Zulu legend's words, rolled across the heavens to the earth, where it caused great cataclysmic events. Now, you move that big thing, that bugger in here, and you're going to do tremendous damage to the earth, certainly initially, because everything moves. And you look at these ancient legends all over the world. They talk about a golden age, a previous age of great human expansion and possibility coming to an end with cataclysmic events, massive earthquakes, a tidal wave that went across the earth, and the fact the earth moved. All these different cultures around the world, in different ways, describe the same thing.
It's mentioned in the Sanskrit, the Gita, the Bible, the Torah, the Sumerian tablets.
Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned Credo Mutwa. When you were talking about the folklore, you were also a part of this understanding of the Necklace of Mysteries that was explaining this. Can you explain that a little bit for us?
Well, I met Credo Mutwa in 1996, 97, and 98, or across that period. I met him about 2 or 3 times. We became very close friends. And he's been in the underground shamanistic network in Africa for much of his life. He's coming up to his 90th year. I mean, he goes way back. And he's had access to information that has been passed on basically in secret, because these networks were created when the Europeans came in, the British overwhelmingly, and they targeted the shamans, targeted the knowledge. They didn't want that knowledge to continue. They wanted to destroy it. They used Christianity to replace it, as they did in many countries around the world, and they targeted the shaman. They didn't want this information to be passed on, so it went underground. And when I met him, he was already, quite an age. And because in America or in places like that, people have had the ability to go through this material dream of success and found it wanting, and now they're looking for something else. In so many developing countries, including South Africa and other parts of Africa, they haven't taken that to the point where it's like found wanting. It's still the dream. It's still the thing that is the symbol of success, like the Western model with the Nike trainers and all that stuff. And so the knowledge that Credo's been carrying, I mean, a lot of people, of his own people, have been turning away from it. And he's been looking for ways to pass it on. And he reached the point where he said, the situation in the world's got to such a stage, never mind passing it on in secret, it's got to get out there. And, I've helped him do that to an extent by giving him a platform. And he shared so much with me. And, people have looked at the Native Americans, they've looked at the South Americans, the Central Americans like the Mayans and stuff like that. And they've looked in Asia and other parts of the world. And what's so been neglected, forgotten, is Africa.
Yeah.
And Africa has the most unbelievable gifts of knowledge, both of history and other things, to give us. And there's this man sitting there who, he's a library on legs, and so he's like, talk about some force handing me pieces in the puzzle. Yeah. So one day they came along and went, have that one, mate. And it was Credo Mutwa, and he's been incredibly helpful to me.
It was important enough for even him to be withheld, and they stole the Necklace of Mysteries?
Yeah, the Necklace of the Mysteries he first showed me when I first met him. It's called a necklace, but it goes on your shoulders.
Right.
And coming from it, and it's ever so heavy. How this guy, his age, walks around with it, and another one like it called funnily enough, the necklace of the moons, because they say there are many moons which aren't actually, what they seem to be. And hanging from it are symbols which he uses, and others before him, because it's about 1,000 years old, he reckons at least. He uses to tell the story of not just Africa but the world. And right at the front, pride of place, is a human woman and a clearly not human entity.
Right.
And shall we say they fit together sexually, shall we say. And he said that's there on the necklace in pride of place right at the front, because he's talking about the legends of the interbreeding between a non-human race of humans to create not just a hybrid bloodline, which became, as I've been writing about for years, these Illuminati bloodlines like the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, the British royal family, pass through history, these hybrids, these demigods, these people that see themselves as genetically and in every other way elite and
Right.
above the rest of the population.
Entitled.
But also, the human race in general was genetically tinkered with.
Sure.
And it seems to me, the more I put this together, and it's an ongoing thing, it's gone on since I finished the book, of course, I mean, that's what I do, that there's a modus operandi here, whereby these moons are brought in to a target planet, and it's very, very much symbolized by the Death Star theme in the Star Wars movies. Of course, produced by a massive insider called George Lucas. That they move these moons in, and when that happens, the target planet's status quo, society, way of life, it's gone because of the effect of the planet, of what happens. And then when everything starts to die down and settle down, they then go to phase 2, which is changing the form, in this case the human form, changing the way that society works so it becomes a slave race and a slave society serving this control system. And what's coming more and more into my research is Saturn. And what Saturn's very famous for, of course, is the number of moons it has. And I would strongly suggest that we need to look at that from a new light as well. What are they really? And, I know that some people have pointed in the past and more recently to the fact that Phobos, the moon of Mars, is hollow and is a construct. And just before I came out here, Robert, we've got an astronomy, mainstream science astronomy program in Britain. I think it's one of the most long-running programs in the world, maybe the longest running. It's called The Sky at Night. And they had a guy on there who was talking about the fact, I think it's the European Express spacecraft, has been doing close photographing of Phobos. And they've concluded that it's very possibly hollow, and it's made of nothing like they've ever found a meteorite or asteroid to be made of. And a number of times over the years, people have, I think Richard Hoagland's talked about it more recently, that's not actually what it seems to be. It's some kind of craft. And all I'm saying is that's actually not a one-off. It's a modus operandi.
No.
And that's just in the sky. The moon, our moon, is just a massive version of it. And when you talk about the size of it, it's been postulated that by scientists over the years that if you look at the Earth's magnetic field and the size of the Earth, it could well be that the Earth wouldn't have a satellite. And if it did, it would be a small one. That's 2,160 miles around. It's bigger than Pluto. And some scientists don't even talk about a planet-satellite-moon relationship, but a dual-planet relationship.
Right.
And then you talk to insiders over the years who've been into some of these inner projects, and one of the things that you pick up as a theme is that when they talk about spacecraft that they've seen or pictures of, it's the size of them. And again, we go back to what I was just talking about. We've got to expand our perception of possibility out of the box that says we can't do it, so it can't be done, into the understanding that because of the way humanity's been suppressed and kept down and kept ignorant, we are nothing like the cutting edge of possibility. So to dismiss something because we can't do it is fine. That's a choice. Good luck to you. Let's have a beer. But you're going to miss the point if you do.
Let me ask you a quick question regarding the outer aspect of the moon, which I always felt was interesting. If a meteor hits the moon, it causes a scarring. But what's interesting about the moon is that there are many round, completely round, concave crevices, as though it were carved out. Now, some say in the you might mention the Bible, that there are the wars in the heaven that were recorded before recorded time, or talked about before recorded time. Right. Could these be sort of almost a laser force beam weapons of what they call the war in heavens, since they've made such perfectly round circles? What's your take on that versus the scarring?
Well, there's a few things really. It's quite possible that it was built like that in a way as almost a form of camouflage. Because and I don't say that's what it is. I'm saying that's a possibility because of this reason. What comes up again and again, ancient and modern, is that this predator race, which is feeding off humanity and feeding off the resources of the earth, by the way, because that moon's got no resources. They have to use the target planet for resources to survive, etc. And I think myself that there's something big time involved in gold and what they need up there. And if we quickly go back to that Crater Muttle story, he says that what the Zulu legend says about the moon is that two reptilian creatures with, quote, scaly skin like a fish, and as the legend goes, called Wawani and Mpanku, rolled the moon across the heavens, brought it to where it is, and it caused catastrophe on Earth. And these were two brothers. And these brothers were called water brothers. They were symbolized by various things relating to water, which in the next book I think I'll be able to explain a major aspect about water, because there's big time something we need to know, and I think I now know about the oceans, but I've got to follow it up a bit more. But what am I talking about? As you well know, Robert, I'm almost now telling the story from the Sumerian tablets of Enki and Enlil, and at least Enki was very associated symbolically with water, and the Anunnaki. And the Anunnaki were, according to the Sumerian tablets translated by people like Sitchin, wanted gold. And they turned humanity into a sort of slave race initially, I say by tinkering with their genetics. That's in the ancient accounts all over the place, the interbreeding between the gods and humans and the Nephilim and all that stuff in Genesis. And it was to mine for gold. I mean, if you go back to Africa, there's evidence of gold mining in Africa 100,000 years ago. And interestingly, the oldest form of known worship is worship of the serpent. They found again in Africa, in Botswana, on the border there, in the very place where the Sand people, better known as the Bushmen, say humanity was first created, but that modern humanity was created by the great python. And they found evidence there, mainstream scientists and researchers I'm talking about, of serpent worship 70,000 years ago. And there was another book by a guy called John Bathurst Dean. He was a reverend, and he wrote a book about serpent worship in the 1930s. I think it was 1933. And as you know, in that period of like the 1920s, 1930s and stuff, some really great stuff was written. That has proved to the test of time, because the lid wasn't quite on so much then. And he details in that book that everywhere you look, there's serpent worship, and the serpent worship and the intervention of the serpent was related in some form to what is known as the fall of man.
Right.
Now, for me, what is called the fall of man or the fall of humanity was when the moon came and basically wiped the slate clean, rebooted human society and everything. And when I look at this story, and I look at the ancient accounts of what humanity was like and the world was like, and then how it all changed, I now think of the Avatar movie, because it seems to me if you take the blue people in the Avatar movie and that Pandora moon to be the Earth and humans as we were before, they had that incredible connectedness. Everything was connected to everything else. They could see the unity of everything between nature, animals, and people. And then in came this left brain, clever but so stupid human military because they wanted what? Not to experience and celebrate the connectedness of everything, but there were some resources under there,
Exactly,
which are worth money, mate.
dictating a relocation.
Exactly, and
Art imitates life.
Yeah.
Same thing in Iraq.
Exactly.
We're here to get it. We can relocate them peaceably, or we can do it by force. But whatever, our agenda stands.
Yeah, because we want the resources, because this is our level of awareness, like that big, you know. So if you take that blue people society to be the Earth before the moon came, in what I'm suggesting,
Right.
and then that mentality that came in and tried to destroy that whole society in the Avatar movie, to be the mentality that came in with the moon, I think something pretty much close to that theme has happened. And of course, since then, it's that mentality that has controlled and built the structure of control that has become what we call humanity ever since. But of course, the moon matrix takes it another stage further.
We say that, we were discussing earlier that not all of our thoughts are our own. We're actually sharing the space with other entities. I often say, even in my own lectures, that we're walking with a committee. And this unseen committee hears what we're thinking. How we perceive ourselves is one way, but it's really the way they see us in the field around our body that dictates to them what we really are. And when we talk about this committee, I couldn't help but feel that as we get closer to the birth of this particular conjunction we're all concerned about, which is the winter solstice in 2012 and leading beyond, there's going to be an opening up of the coding. The DNA structure within the human body is based on 64 codons, of which only 20 are turned on. And then since in the last 25 years, we've seen there are some people actually with 24 that are turned on. Now, my feeling is that with these conjunctions that are happening, that we're getting to a point of being a slightly more telepathic society because of our DNA structure being changed by a series of these conjunctions that are unfolding. And that moon plays a very integral part in that. As far as that, do you believe that we're headed towards being more telepathic, that there will be some that will be able to see, sense, and hear on a deeper level, while others won't have a clue, and they will deny anything has happened?
Well, I could talk about that at length, because that is a major theme in my work. But if I could come to that in a second, but just picking up what you said about the moon there, just very quickly. I'll tell you how I see it. In all the 20 years that I've been doing this so far, I've worked across endless different subjects and interconnected them. But the biggest one is, what is reality? What is reality? How are we experiencing reality? Who are we? What is this? Because unless we understand those basic questions, how can we understand anything else?
Right.
You know, you can't. And what I'm suggesting very strongly is this, and I do back it up with an enormous amount of evidence, is that we live in the equivalent of the wireless internet. And it's like a virtual reality universe. And we are decoding the wireless internet, what I call the cosmic internet, not through the desktop computer, but through the body computer. So in this room now, this hotel has the wireless internet. Well, where the bloody hell is it, right? Where is it? I can't see it. But if I get that computer there and I tune it in,
It'll find it.
out of the unseen, not only comes something on my screen, what comes on my screen is part of a global collective reality called the World Wide Web, which someone in South Africa or Brazil or Australia or Asia can pick up the same as I can in
Sure.
this room in California. And we create our own reality. That's what we're told, and I accept that to a very large extent. But people say to you, what if you create your own reality? How come both of us can see that lamp? Both of us can see that book or this chair? Because, as Einstein said, reality is an illusion, albeit a persistent one. And the reason it's persistent is because we're constantly decoding this cosmic internet, this waveform level of information, which is the basic construct of this reality.
Right.
This, what I call the holographic reality, what the people call physical, is merely the decoded expression of this information, waveform, vibrational information. And so in China, they can't get chunks of the internet, large chunks of the World Wide Web, the collective reality, because it's firewalled off. The computers won't read it. What I'm suggesting very strongly is that what's coming from the moon, not just the fact that it's physically there, but that as we've discussed, has an enormous impact. I mean, just something you mentioned earlier, the Zulu legends say that women didn't menstruate before the cataclysm, before the moon came. It was a totally different genetics. I'm saying that what's coming from that moon is like a blocking frequency. And it is preventing us, and I say that it accesses the body computer through the reptilian brain. One of the major influences on human behavior. It's where we get the fear of not surviving and anxiety and about not surviving, not just physically, but financially, in terms of our reputation, our relationship, our job, all this stuff. And we're being suppressed by this blocking frequency. And the information, it seems to me, that we are picking up and decoding, what I call the cosmic internet, it's coming to us in the form of photons from the suns, probably from other sources too, but from the suns, in this case, our sun. And it was interesting that the Zulu legends say that before the moon came, the moon was perceived as female. I think they used to call it Langa, the desired one. And when the moon came, first of all, the Zulu legends say when the moon came, humanity went crazy in the head. And also that they started perceiving the sun as male and the moon as female. And this is part of what I call the hack. I was told right at the start, when I was being told I was going to go out and do what I'm doing, that there was use the word in the widest context, there was a spiritual revolution coming, because there was a vibrational change coming that was going to wake humanity up from basically its hypnotic state. I say that's where the hypnotic state comes from, that thing we see in the sky at night. And that this vibrational change, what I dubbed in my first book, the truth vibrations, that's what the name of my first book was after I started to get this in 1990. 91. And the truth vibrations is the name I gave to this vibrational change, because what I was told was that it was going to have two major effects. First of all, people were going to wake up from the coma. The more awake first, and then more and more who were not anything like awake to start with. And we're seeing that, Robert, aren't we? My goodness me, I'm seeing it all over the world. But also, it was going to bring to the surface all that had been hidden from humanity.
Right.
20 years ago, not a sign of it. Look at it now.
Yes.
Look what we know now we didn't know last year, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It's coming up. And this truth vibrations is, for me, this. Another thing that I've kind of put together, it's a long story, most of them are, because they're pieces that you put together and come from different sources, but keep pointing you in the same direction. I'm saying that out of the black holes, and they've now discovered there's a massive one at the center of this galaxy, and they perceive that there's one at the center of every galaxy. I think the black holes all over the place. As this, out of the black holes is coming the base vibration of this reality, the base vibration of the cosmic internet. But this vibration changes. And as the vibration, the base vibration resonates, it's eliciting information from the suns, and probably other sources too, from the suns on that frequency, in that frequency range. And so that's the information, the photon energy, the photon information that is passing through the meridian lines of the acupuncture system. Because what are they doing? The acupuncture lines, the chi, what is it? It's information. And so we're constantly decoding information as this energy goes through the genetic structure. And of course, the brain's massively involved in the decoding.
And that's increasing.
Yeah, and also the Earth, with the meridian lines of the Earth, the ley lines and the vortex points, or the ancients used to put their kind of great temples on and everything, and the Freemasons put things on, temples on and stuff like that to harness that energy. That's photon energy as well. The planet 2 is decoding information. And so, because of the moon matrix, the hack, like the Chinese firewalling off the World Wide Web, we have been receiving a fraction of that information. But this resonance, this base resonance, doesn't stay constant, as I've said. It goes through a cycle. It doesn't go round, it just vibrates differently to a different beat as it goes through its cycle, and then basically returns to something like the start, and it all starts again. It's what I call the time loop. As that base frequency changes, so the information coming from into what you might call the cosmic internet, that changes. And this is what the circular nature of time is about. Right. Time is also an illusion. It's a decoded illusion based on information. But you've got the Mayans, they talk about the circular nature of time. You've got the Yugas in Asia, the circular nature of time. It's a constant theme. And what do they talk about? They talk about going through a golden age and then a more suppressed epoch where things are like a dark age, like suppressed and limitation. And what I've begun to understand, mate, is that very clearly we are changing epochs. And what you're talking about with these astrological and astronomical sequences, they're all a holographic expression, a played out in this reality expression of information changing within the base construct, because at the moment we're at this cusp of change. I mean, what did people talk about, even, in the New Age years ago, the dawning of the age of Aquarius? Well, these are all, and the Mayans talk about 2012 and all this stuff. Well, maybe they do. I mean, some people question all that in detail, but the theme, absolutely, I agree with. That there is an epoch change because there is an information change. Now, in the situation we're in, we're in the cusp, so both information sources are actually coexisting. And this is where we've got this very clearly emerging, forking the road of those people that are still decoding the information from the old epoch, and look at people like you and me and others. And
we'll look crazy to them.
What are you doing? You're crazy.
We'll look crazy to them,
and
yes.
Then, but more and more, and my God, have I seen it over 20 years. More and more, all over the world. I've been in 51 countries now, and this is a global phenomenon where people are starting to open their minds, because
To get it.
the thing is that the the information of the old epoch of suppression and limitation, on which this whole control system and suppression is based, because when that's gone, that's got to go, because it's an expression of it. So the control system is doomed. It's trying to hang on for dear life by throwing the kitchen sink at us at the moment, but it's doomed ultimately. But if you are in a mental and emotional state, therefore what? Vibrational state, resonance state, in which you are only tuning into that, then you will stay welded in your sense of perception and possibility to the old epoch, very much more low-grade information, because it was the epoch of suppression and ignorance. So
Right.
it was an experience for consciousness. But now we're moving into this era, and when you open your mind, open your body mind to consciousness, the infinite level of us, then you start to resonate
Right.
quicker. And what happens? You start to resonate with information
With the
that's
new
resonating
information.
quicker, which is this new information that's coming in, what I call the truth vibrations. And that's why people are awakening, and they're saying, why couldn't I see it before? Because you weren't connected to what
Right.
you're connected to now.
The cosmic intelligence is more
Yeah.
available to them.
Exactly,
Because
the
they're
greater
open.
intelligence.
While the other ones stand and they still sit in the old world.
Exactly.
So there's a separation in definition. So some of us will really get it and move forward and actually be able to even access it. Going back to what we were saying about the Avatar movie, this is a very similar thing. The idea that if you sat still, if you focused on the energies that are there, then you'll get that information. You'll see the new information that's coming in that's exposing the misinformation and the disinformation about what we've come to believe so far. And the other people will still be stuck in the other world, so we will look crazy to them because we've sort of moved up into this new expression, accessing the new information.
But for the people still welded to the old information construct, they are just an opening of the mind away to moving into the new era. And when I look at the control system now, in all its forms, all the food additives of chemicals in drink and fluoride in the water and electromagnetic pollution, more and more surveillance, more and more stress, fear of the economy, and all these things to destabilize us mentally, emotionally, chemically, electromagnetically, therefore put it all together vibrationally. It seems, if you don't put this other stuff together, that what's happening is that this control system is reaching its ultimate goal of total global power. I see it another way. If I knew that this vibrational change transformation was coming 20 years ago, how long has the control system bloody known it's coming? And it's no coincidence that it's in this time, this point, where this truth vibration transformation is really starting to impact upon more and more human perception, that we're being hit by everything this system could throw at us, because the body computer is a receiver transmitter. That's why the body is basically a crystalline entity, but it's also an electrochemical organism on one level. And all this stuff we're consuming, all this electromagnetic pollution, all this stuff in water and drink and whatever, and food, it's destabilizing us electrochemically. And when you have a distortion like that, you cannot decode reality and this new awareness on the scale that you would if the blueprint was as it should be. And of course, what they're doing now is targeting children overwhelmingly. They're targeting them with all the stuff in food and drink and sweets and candy and all the rest of it in America. And we have this thing called attention deficit disorder, which is the inability to concentrate, so they say, and hyperactivity and all the rest of it, right? And they're giving them Ritalin, which is helping to justify the drugging of children and young people. But the symptoms of attention deficit disorder, which they've just created as a mental problem, exactly the same symptoms that you get from the additives in food and drink that we're giving children. Exactly the same.
So we're
they're
aiding the problem
Yes.
in the first place.
But they're targeting the children on multi levels, because they are the next generation that are going to take this truth vibration change on.
Right.
So they're trying to stop us becoming what this vibrational information change could make us become. But it's like, it's like trying to stop a tornado with a,
Right.
with a little sticker or something. It's a fly on an elephant's back. What we are experiencing, and what we will experience for a few years yet, are many challenges as the cornered rat of the control system thrashes out everything it can, tries to push through as quickly as it can, everything possible to keep the lid on this awakening. But eventually, the point comes where the truth vibrations, the new information construct, becomes the dominant one.
Right.
At which point, down will come the house of cards.
And we'll be able to
Control system.
access that.
Yeah.
The new and the old world are actually colliding in a way we've never dreamed possible.
And we will be able to access the ability to perceive and create in full awareness.
Right.
On a level that we would even think possible, but what the humanity once did before the fall, and is going to again, because we are not experiencing humanity in its full glory, its full potential, its full infinite possibility. We have experienced in our lifetime, and long back in what we call history, a suppressed, a controlled, and an ignorant humanity, and therefore its sense of possibility and what it can create has expressed that all.